All right, I think we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jen Jones, Chief Marketing Officer of RGP. It's great to have you with us for a conversation about what really it takes to build an employee experience that works end to end. Um, if you can go to the next slide. For those of you who may be new to RGP, we are a global professional services firm focused on helping organizations design and deliver employee experiences. Our team spans strategy, service design, workplace automation, intranets, and HR service delivery solutions. So whether you need to just round out your team with on-demand support, or you're really looking for that full scale employee experience strategy with implementation and development support, we can really meet you where you are. You want to go to the next slide? We're also proud to partner with Akumina, who's here today. They're going to share a little bit about where their product is going, but together we help organizations move from traditional intranets to intelligent, connected employee experiences. And we're really excited to share our personal journey with Akumina, the lessons we learned, what's possible when you bring the right strategy, the right design, and the right technology together. We're also offering a NASBA CPE credit for today's webinar. To be eligible for that CPE, you just have to remain for the duration of the program and answer 3 polling questions. Additionally, if you have any questions for us, just drop them in the chat and we'll try to get to them at the end of the call. I want to go to the next slide. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our awesome panelists. We have Lindsay Spencer, who is RGP's senior strategist, and she's actually our Kumina product owner. And we have Troy Trudell, who's going to do that demo at the end, who's Akumina's lead product specialist. Want to go to the next slide? I just want to start quickly for some context about internet journeys. And depending, whether you guys have started yet on your own internet journey or maybe you're at the beginning, no worries. I think this really applies to anybody kind of seeking to think through their employee experience strategy. But really for context, if you think about the beginning of the internet, it really started with sort of that centralized information hub, a place where you could store policies, news, links. Over time, it kind of expanded to that communication and collaboration space, but it really still required, employees to kind of hunt for what they're looking for. I think you probably all heard that whole like drowning in content kind of idea. So expectations really kind of shifted, and employees wanted a true one-stop shop, a single place where they could get answers, access tools, complete tasks. And I think that's where we've really been pushing in the last several years towards that service delivery, HR, IT, workplace resources all in one experience. And now I think we're kind of at that next phase or that next part of the internet journey, and we're moving really towards the idea of virtual agent orchestration. And a lot of the projects we've worked on as an organization for other organizations over the past few years have really been asking this question. Employees don't want to just have access, going back to that sort of I'm drowning in a sea of content. How do we actually help orchestrate the tasks they need? How do they ask a simple question and instead of having to figure out where to go and what to do, it kind of can start to orchestrate all of the things that come after, basically connect systems, complete a task, surface what people really need in the moment without that friction. And so today, that's sort of the transformation we're here to unpack. And we're going to obviously start talking about our own journey on Akumina and how we evolved from sort of static content to more of that self-service. And then Troy's going to really take us through that future of intranet, where it's going, that intelligent, human-centered digital workplace. And we're really excited to give you a little bit of demo of some of the AI-enabled self-service capabilities. You want to move to the next slide? So I think it's important for context to kind of start talking about our own journey to tell a little bit about like our organization. We have a pretty unique talent model. We have a unique mix of global solutions with on-demand talent and full consulting services. So with that, we have a pretty flexible mix of full-time employees, hourly and contract consultants, and each group has very different needs, different expectations, different rhythms of work. And so that means our intranet really can't be a one size fits all approach. It really needs to have that personalization support that provides clarity and connectivity for no matter how you're working with RGP. So ultimately, what I hope to kind of take you through today is when we kind of did our employee experience strategy, these 5 value themes really are what it kind of all leaned back into. And so no matter what persona we're developing for, and obviously going to be a little bit different per persona, it really comes back to these five themes of growth, value, flexibility, reliability, transparency, and belonging. And so you're going to see these themes come through as we talk through kind of the different parts of our experience. Do you want to go to the next slide? And so I'm going to kind of do a quick paint of the journey, and then Lindsay and I are going to dive more into it. So again, we also started as a centralized information hub, what we called RGpedia, policies, benefits, tools, kind of centralized in one place. It was useful, but again, kind of going into that employee experience strategy and really doing the research, we really knew we needed to deliver on a more personalized experience. And that's where, and you can kind of see in the journey, and we're going to talk about each of these, we really dove into learning, upskilling, project integration, career content, and really moving from that static information towards something that was more dynamic and supportive of growth, no matter what type of employee model you were engaged in RGP. So it's definitely been a journey, and we're still evolving. But I think what I can promise is that everything we've done has been guided by that same goal of creating an employee experience that really works for a diverse, distributed workforce and meets people where they are. So we're going to take you through that journey today. But before we get started, I want to start with a quick polling question. So do you want to go to the next slide? So I'm curious for everybody on the call, where is your organization in the intranet journey today? So number one, we have a centralized information hub. Number two, we have a personalized resources and communications. Number three, we have integrated service delivery. Number four, we have a virtual agent. And number five, maybe you're not sure, you haven't really begun yet. So we'll give you a minute to answer the first polling question. All right, do we want to close that poll out? Okay, great. So a lot of people on the call are sort of at the beginning with that more centralized information hub, which is great. It's a great place to start, and it's really certainly the first sort of step. And I'm hoping that some of the stuff that we unpack today will take us, help you guys kind of continue on that journey. And certainly the demo at the end, I think, will help as well. So Lindsay, if you want to go to the next slide, let's get started. Similar to everybody on the call, we began our journey with that sort of classic, you know, content hub. And really, it came back to the use case of overwhelming number of SharePoint sites, inconsistent permissions, scattered repositories. And we said, what do we do next? So talk to us a little bit about RGpedia, which is what we called it at that time, and sort of, our journey to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can go to the next slide while I talk about this. But as you said, RGPD really came around to address the need of having an initial employee experience with all of those, everything was kind of in separate SharePoints. It really causes permission issues of who has what, where is everything, what do I actually have access to? So creating this spot makes sure that all of those resources that everybody is constantly looking for is in one place, but also that you have a little bit more control over the latest and greatest, right? There's 15 different versions of everything usually, as I'm sure everybody is very familiar with. So, this gave all of the content owners, because any organization has multiple content owners across the board, it gives one place where everybody can coordinate, be working towards the same goals of making sure that their information is, shareable, findable, and can be governed in a more managed, centralized way. And in addition, starting out and beginning to use Akumina as the employee experience platform really gave this modern user interface. It kind of took us out of that world of SharePoint backend, SharePoint, folder structure, et cetera, which is a fantastic backend. It still works as the, underlying data structure, but it means that we can now take that information. At this point, we could take it and serve it up in a more user-friendly way, something that's way more navigable for all users. And one thing too that, was interesting, I think, especially as a setup before we talk about where we went next, this was a very department focused organization of content. So, again, everybody was kind of managing their own different SharePoint sites or sharing things internally over Teams messages, et cetera, or sharing them through support tickets that might have come in on a regular basis. So we wanted to make sure that all of that information was in one place and findable, and it kind of naturally came about that that content was still all very organized around functions and departments, organized around who owned the content, as opposed to maybe the way that individual employees would use the content, which is kind of my setup for where we ended up evolving next. But yeah, RGPD really allowed us to have this centralized content and modern user interface.
Well, thanks for that. And if you want to go to the next slide, I go back to those six themes. And I think, from my point of view, how we evolved, we really did focus on those six themes of belonging, growth, value, transparency, reliability, and flexibility, and what those design themes might mean to each of our different personas within our organization and what they needed to get done. So tell me a little bit about, why was the journey from RGpedia, so having sort of that centralized content hub, to something that really spoke to these different types of design themes. Why was that necessary for our workforce, and what did that really mean?
Yeah, I think it was really necessary because, having RGpedia solved, I would say, the initial like business problem, right, of making sure that everybody could access the information and made sure that they knew what was the latest. But then we kind of start thinking about the employee problems. What are the challenges that they're facing? Exactly like you said, those themes, right? People don't want to just have, why do they want access to that information? Why do they want access to an organizational chart? They want to access that because they want to make sure that they understand what's going on in the organization, that they feel connected to the org and to each other, that they're able to be more productive. There's employee needs and goals that ultimately they're trying to achieve. And there's a huge opportunity of where the intranet can provide for that, right? And again, going back to what I'd said before of why it started out a little bit more department focus, organized around how the company was structured. We really wanted to flip the script with this shift to make sure that we understand how an employee's world is organized. How are they needing to look for information, right? When you're looking for benefits, you don't necessarily think HR, you think my benefits, my time off, my work, my clients, etc., my resources, my community, my network. And so we really wanted to put the employee at the center of the content experience and reorganize everything around that, which again starts to help us achieve those values because we're thinking directly about the employee and what their use cases are, outside of just the way that the content was originally organized. And kind of the big piece that really made that evolution possible and really unlocks an employee-centric experience is personas, right? The more everything's going to feel more relevant when we're delivering data and content, et cetera, in a targeted way, which meant that we really needed to understand, like you said earlier, our audiences and what are their unique needs, because that was one of the things that RGpedia didn't necessarily address because people felt like only sections of the site belong to them, or where's my piece? Where do I find what I'm looking for within this large site? So now with RGP Connect, everything is relevant to them. They can go to any section of the site, and that section of the site will have the information that is tailored and relevant to them, whether it's your location, your employee type, your project type, et cetera. We really sat back and tried to understand, of all of this content, who are the different audiences? And of those audiences, what are the attributes that define them? How do we really define a persona? And we kind of had that aha moment, I would say, of it's not necessarily about the fully formed persona, it's about the attributes that make it up so that you can have a dynamic persona experience. And I can serve up content based off of the multitude of hats that I wear, the multitude of attributes that define me, to be able to add up together into, a unique experience for me, Lindsay, looking at RGP Connect, and so we took data from various systems to be able to define people based off of conversations that we had across the board to understand audiences, to understand how do you really need, like, who's really going to use this? How are they going to use this? Why are they going to use this? And those are the questions that I think really helped us understand what does a persona-driven experience look like, and what does that mean specifically for RGP and its different audiences?
I really like that. And I remember HPDM, as we like to call it, hyper-personalization data management. I like that. But maybe for everyone on the call, talk a little bit about what that really looks like, because I think we're all familiar with personas, especially from a marketing perspective. And, you're even familiar with when you go through a transformation, defining who those personas might be. But how did you really get the system to recognize those attributes of data and give them the right type of content?
Great question. So we kind of started with again, understanding what are the attributes that we're looking for, and then we tried to understand, okay, where does that data live today? Where's the most accurate version of that data live today? So we're looking at not just Active Directory, but also Workday, which is RGP's employee data uh, platform. So we knew that there were the attributes that we were looking for living in that system. And so we built an integration to be able to pull in that information into Akumina. And then as somebody logs into the system, since they're logging in through their RGP account, right, it starts to understand, okay, you are this employee profile, which means that you have all of these data attributes of, again, location, job profile, skill set, etc. And then that way on any given page, and even within any given component on the page, it takes into account those attributes of the person who's logged in based off of the data that we got from the source system. And it serves it back up based off of, okay, I see that they're in North America. Check. I'm going to return all of the things that match that persona. And this applies to, news. So, this shifting over to this view as well really makes it a powerful communications tool. So any article that goes out, any site alert or big message that goes up can all be persona driven events, so really have an automatically curated page of content, but even within thinking about policies, right? We can have a list of policies and we return the right ones depending on your employee type, depending on your location. So making sure that we had access to that system data so that we could use it to power this platform and be able to unlock kind of more human experiences was kind of how we went about it.
Yeah, so I think that actually brings us to a good topic when we talk about kind of the next slide. So if you want to move to the next slide for us. So if I go back to the themes of belonging, and you mentioned Workday, for instance, but thinking about, our large distributed workforce that we have, and it's a super diverse workforce, like I mentioned at the top, different employment models and stuff like that. How did you look at the challenge of really helping people feel connected from the org, no matter where they sat, no matter, what part of the globe they sat in, and certainly what job function they were in?
Um, Great question. So when we were doing the user research specifically for the intranet, right, you had talked about you did the original research to understand what are the things that employees value. And then we did kind of another round of, okay, we're envisioning it within this RGP Connect platform. What does that actually mean and look like? And we really just started to hear all of the different ways that somebody within RGP felt like they could belong. And that went from social clubs. We heard a lot about a Peloton group. That was a thing that came up a lot. We heard about professional communities, people really wanting to be able to understand, what are you working on that's similar to what I'm working on, and how can we work together? How can we help each other grow and deliver things, really share knowledge? It also meant teams, as like you said, we have global teams or people are in different time zones and we all have different working hours. How do we work effectively together? How do I have more awareness of the location of my peers or what they're working on when they're taking time off, and stay connected in that way? And another aspect is just celebrating and recognizing each other, whether that's, new hires, work anniversaries, birthdays. And then a whole nother aspect, there was, as you could see, there was many, many aspects of what does belonging mean to people. One other aspect is, when you're working on things together with this project-based work, you might roll off and on projects and kind of lose touch. If you're not working with somebody on a day-to-day basis, it's hard to stay connected. So how can I maintain that network that I'm slowly growing over time with my years at RGP? So we built out several different pieces of functionality, as well as brought together content and different content owners to build out kind of a centralized experience for all of these things. So people have access to, hey, here's a list of all of the different ways that you can engage, from employee resource groups to professional communities. Here's an automated list of, which we got again from Workday data. Here's all of the new hires within the last 7 days. Here's the work anniversaries to celebrate. So you can keep up with all of the moments and opportunities for celebration with the network and across the globe, as well as functionality around, hey, here's your team members, a 360-degree view of your team members, from direct reports to your manager to your peers, and brought in certain information such as, what is their time zone, what's their location, are they on PTO right now, are they available for projects, and just a way to kind of keep everybody aligned and connected on your team, but also we built some functionality to enable people to build their own network with this saved connections functionality, so people can pin and save people that they want to keep track of as they roll off of a project, or maybe they move to a different city and they're not in the office with them on a daily basis. People can define what their network means to them, so they have multiple different ways to stay connected to people, to stay up on what's going on across the organization.
That's great. Do you want to go to the next slide? Awesome. Well, continuing on kind of like the connection point as far as workday, and certainly I think that a big thing that I heard too from a theme perspective is transparency and reliability. Uh, I think in a lot of employee experience projects we do, not just for ourselves, but for our clients, HR service delivery is a huge part of that. Of oftentimes they sometimes do remain separate, and how do we make it one experience so that it's interconnected to the things you're doing, and not something you have to go think about somewhere else to go. So, how did you take this into account um, when we were planning RGP Connect? And, what were the primary use cases for thinking through?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can probably relate to the fact that benefits are a really important part of an employee experience, right? It's one of the core elements that's not necessarily work related. It makes you feel like, hey, this is a way that the company is supporting me. And these are, things that are there for me to go and take advantage of and feel supported and valued. And like Jen said as well, to feel like I can rely on how the organization is supporting me. So this was a really key piece for us to kind of get right. And I can say today it's definitely the most popular part of the site that people visit most regularly. But we wanted to sit down and understand what are all of the different perks, benefits, right? Benefits is kind of a large word that also means that there's time off to take advantage of. There are, discount clubs or recognition points as well. We have a whole recognition system where you can, be awarded points and go spend at the store. So really broadening our definition of what benefit means, so that we could pull that information together, and that information being pulled together included, not just, hey, what are the benefits that I've enrolled in this year in Workday? It also means how many points do I have to spend from that recognition system, which is a separate tool from Workday. It also means, what are all of the different like policies and uh, places that I can go to, whether it's that, discount club or all of the other different tools, having a LinkedIn learning license, things like that, right? We wanted to make sure that all of that got brought together and surfaced in a way that was as transparent as possible, so that people understood what can I go and use, how is the company supporting me, and kind of the perks that I get out of being an employee, and be able to use that, and not just easy access, but kind of encouraging. Like you can, maybe see on one of these small screens, but one of the pieces that we built in was how many PTO hours have I taken versus how many do I have left? And here's an easy button to go and, book your next time off, right? We want to be able to promote the usage of these perks, to promote the usage of that time off. And then we also pulled in the information for all of the benefit elections, and, not just listing out, hey, here's what you've elected, but make sure that people have the relevant phone numbers, the relevant group IDs, everything that they need to go in and actually take action on using that information, and having all of the relevant policies. And this is another spot where, we kind of get the user specific data from the system, but we're also leveraging personas to serve up the appropriate, benefit guides depending on who you are, where you live, et cetera. So we really create a user specific experience for people to go and easily find any of their benefits information and start using it as soon as possible.
I think you touched on something that I think is really important that I want to just talk about it for a minute. So it wasn't about, you mentioned like a lot of ours, there was multiple systems servicing a journey, meaning like Workday, You Matter, we have all these different programs that actually service parts of, someone's, just in this case, one theme, right? Benefits, one journey. And I think when, I think we get a question a lot about like, well, why replicate some of that? Like, why pull it in? But I think the thing to understand is when you're forcing when users have to go out to those systems, they have to sort of tie those themes together for themselves. Okay, I have this, now I have to go, where do I have to go again? And then I have to go figure out that and then go to this part of the journey. And what an intranet can really do, I think when it's done well, is bring all of that stuff together in one place and help paint the journey for you. So ultimately, and you're going to see this as we kind of talk about a few more themes, like you mentioned, even learning, Lindsay. And as we get into kind of the next thing about skills, I think a big part of that is like, what skills do I need to be, if there's other opportunities, whether it's consulting opportunities, or maybe I want to just continue to grow in my current role, whatever that might be. But all of those things can be tied into different parts of the journey. And I think being able to surface them in one place and actually paint that journey for a user is critically important. And that's what you're missing out on when your stuff is retained just in the system of records. So if you want to skip to the next slide, it kind of brings me to the skills. And I think this is a topic that, is a common thing in employee experience strategy. And we hear about a lot. It's like, obviously we want to reduce attrition. How do you, have employees grow and stay where they are, versus, leaving and finding something else. And this was obviously important to our own solution as well. And so we really wanted to incorporate, that into how we approached employee experience. And it's going to kind of not only be important when we talk about this part of the journey, but certainly when we get to the next part, which is jobs. So talk to us a little bit about, skills and basically how that relates to sort of understanding what's available to you, from the last slide from benefits and then going into jobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, as a professional services company, skills are kind of your core commodity, right? Like that's what clients are looking for. That's how people are being matched. That's how people are able to be successful and feel confident going on to their projects. And, a large question or ask that kept coming from consultants across the board in how what they needed to feel more successful, to feel more confident going into projects and felt like, hey, I can do a better job if. What they're really looking for is, what should I prepare for? What are the types of work that's coming down the pipeline? Because things are always evolving, right? And the latest asks, the latest technologies, the latest trends, skills, et cetera, that our clients are looking for, that all is kind of that information, those trends are in our sales tool within Salesforce. So we went in there and took some of that information to be able to use that data to identify what are the client trends, what are the things that they're caring about right now that our salespeople are talking with clients right now, what's coming up in conversation, what are the technologies that they're most interested in right now? What are the roles that they're most interested in right now? And we expose that data as trends for our consultants that they can understand, hey, this is, in high demand right now, or it's increasing in demand. There's a new spike for this type of role. There's a new, increased trend in asking for this type of ERP system, for instance, right? And so all of this is something that now consultants can come in here, really understand what's the latest and greatest on what our clients are looking for. And then the next step, right, kind of like Jen said, we always try and look at this as a journey. Okay, they have this information. We already kind of know what they're going to do with it, right? We already know that. I know that ERP systems are popular right now. Let me go learn. Let me go train myself so that I am prepared for as we get more and more roles in that. Or if I'm about to go into a project for that, I want to be as ready as possible to be able to deliver to my best. Then they're looking for learning information, and so we worked with the life and learning team, a couple of who are on the call here, and worked really closely with us so that we could take that next step in the journey and provide that for folks of, yes, this is a popular skill right now, this is a popular technology right now, you want to upskill in it, you want to learn about it, here's a curated learning path. And then we pulled in those curated learning paths that they helped us create over in Workday. So it's just an example of, we really understand the data that they're looking for, as well as what they want to do with it. And we try to take, you have the system, take the user as far into the journey as we can.
I love that, Lindsay. And then that kind of brings us to the next slide. So using this data to also surface the jobs that were available. So kind of going back to our kind of talent model, like I mentioned, we are on-demand talent as well as consulting services. We have a unique mix of that sort of full-time employee and then contract and hourly consultants. And certainly within our on-demand space, our teams are, consistently looking for, hey, what's next? What are the next roles, the projects that I might be able to go on? But I think that this could really apply to any organization. Going back to my earlier comment about like one of the number one things is like, how do you reduce attrition in an organization when you're doing employee experience strategies and thinking about how do I help somebody understand that they can grow here and that there's other opportunities? And so this is a great example of surfacing that stuff in a way that people can actually not only understand what skills are trending, but then what jobs are also available per those skills. And then how do I bring that all together and go out and do some maybe life and learning training courses or meet the leader that might be supporting those different practice areas, things like that. So I think it's critically important. You're sort of starting to see that journey kind of come together full circle. But talk to us a little bit about the jobs portion of the site.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of the logical next step after we come from the client trends information. Okay, what should I upskill on? And now, hey, that's turned into an actual opportunity, an actual job that I can go and, put my name in the hat for and potentially, start working on. And so this, biased opinion, but this is one of my favorite pieces that we built because again, we're really like, we're really again just trying to do add the most value that we can with the data that we have available. And I think this is one where we really brought together data from multiple systems to go pretty far on that journey of what people expected, right? So we know that people are trying to get their next role, really understand what's next, be prepared, and apply. So what we're doing here is we took all of the jobs that were posted on the internal careers portal and we showed them here. And then we also took every user's profile data from Workday so that when I log into the system, I'm not just seeing, hey, here's the latest jobs. I'm seeing here's the latest jobs compared to my profile data. And I can see, a highlight of which ones are relevant to me from a location standpoint. So I'm in Texas, which one of these are in Texas? Which one of these are close to me? Or which one of these are remote? And it doesn't really matter where I am. And then also looking at skills. What are the skills that the job is asking for? And then what are my skills on my profile? And it highlights for you, hey, these are ones that are a pretty good skills match. And you know what? If there's a good combo, if it's a location relevance and skills relevance, we're bumping it up to say, to the suggested for you section to be say, hey, maybe you should take a look at this. And the whole goal there is we can use data and the information that we're getting from these systems and as well as our understanding of the user journey of knowing that they're going to look at these jobs and what they're really doing is looking for the ones that are most relevant to me. What are the ones that I should action on? So instead of going through 60, I should come in here and I should know which are the 2, 3, 5, however, that are actually applicable to me. So we use the system, use the data to go ahead and take that next step for them and hopefully make their jobs a little bit easier so that they can just stay on top of on way more easily without having to constantly go through the new feed or wait for notifications to come in. They can come in here and kind of just stay on top of what's the most recent jobs that are relevant to me and keep an eye on it. And also constantly, like Jen said, inform their upskilling and inform how they should be keeping their profile up to date, right? As they start to see, oh, there's a few new jobs with this certain skill that I do have, but oh, it's not on my profile yet. I should go and keep my profile as up to date as the different types of skills being used on these jobs evolves.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point too, because, a lot of organizations have talent management systems that they do make some of this information available. In fact, we worked on some projects where, it was about sort of helping people stay within the organization and be able to move on to other careers and stuff. But I think the unique thing here was we didn't rebuild the system. We built an integration so that we could then tie it into all of that personalization data management that we talked about up front. So we knew who you were, what projects you were already on, what your skills profile was. We tied that in then into your learning path. So if you're here and you'd like to be here, what are the things you might need to do to kind of do that? We tie that into our people org chart. So if you want to go out and meet the person that runs our ERP practice or runs our ServiceNow practice or whatever those things may be, um, you know, it ties into that. And then it also ties again back to the next thing we're going to tell you, which we're kind of going through that thing, which is getting into really projects. So how do you then, once you do get a role and you're kind of moving to the next thing, how can you really track the visibility of that project, understand, the hours you have left, the team on your projects, sort of what you've been asked to do. And so, Lindsay, talk to us a little bit about this section of the site as well.
Awesome. This was, I would say, by far the most requested piece of functionality from the time that we started doing RTP Connect, right? Just exactly like you said, that visibility into I'm on a project, how can I be most successful? How much time do I have left? When is it ending? What's coming up next? Where are my teammates? Who else is working at my client? Those are all answers that people are really looking for. And so we took a lot of that data out of our project management system, which also happens to be Workday. And so we pulled out, billable hours left, when's your end date, what roles could be multiple. Are you serving on the project, so that people had an understanding of, okay, what's the data that I'm managing for myself in relation to that project? But we also, again, just thinking about all of the different themes on the circle, right? Like making sure that people had that reliability, felt like they had the support. We all also listed out who's the account leadership for that client and for your project, so that you understand, even though if they're in a different city or a different state, or they're, not on the day-to-day of the project like you are, you knew who you could go to within RGP if you had questions, if you had issues, concerns. And then in addition to that, we also brought in, hey, if there's multiple projects going on at that same client, what are those projects? Who are they? How can I network with them so that we can collaborate? We can help each other be more successful, whether it's knowledge sharing, whether it's, upselling, whether it's making sure, help me meet this other person. I'm trying to, get something done and not really sure where to go or who to talk to, or I'm new on this client. It really just opens up the door to make sure that people are armed with the information to be as successful as possible on their project, and feel confident and feel like they have the people around them and the support to be successful.
That's great. And I think, I keep coming back to those themes, and I think it's really, I just want to bring this back before we move on to the next thing. We're a professional services firm. So it wasn't just about building for us, like, there's aspects of an internet that are sort of, everyone has communication, collaboration, document repository. Those things are really important. And it's certainly where we started too. But we really wanted to build an experience that modeled what our business objectives are and modeled our business objectives and then how our employees needed and wanted to work. And so if you think about the things that we did here, going back to those themes of transparency, belonging, reliability. So imagine this, I'm a professional services consultant. I'm on one project and I want to make sure like what's my next gig so I can track my project. I can know exactly when it's about to end, how many hours are left, how well I'm doing, who my team is. And then if I want to look to see what are some trending skills so I can continue to do my learning, and then I can also go out to the jobs and see what other new roles might be out there, maybe what's the next project that I want to be on. So we really wanted to build an experience that felt like we were surfacing the right things to, again, go back to really keeping people here and feeling like they belong at RGP, because that's critically important for us. So, Lindsay, thank you so much. This was really insightful. I'm going to turn it over to Troy in a minute to discuss some of the AI enabled solutions that are available in Akumina. But before we do that, let's do a quick poll and then I'm going to answer. There is a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to answer one of the questions. Okay, so which use case is the most applicable to your organization? A, personalized communications and resources. B, surfacing employee data such as benefits and time off. C, directed upskilling and career growth. D, streamlining work from project management to sales enablement. Or E, centralizing content across the organization. And while we're waiting for the replies, Lindsay, what was the most important one you think for us?
Great question. I think that the most important one for us was directed upskilling and career growth. I think just from our conversations across the board, I think that was definitely the most requested and provided a lot of opportunities.
I also think like the thing that empowered it all, and that's going to really lead into what Troy is going to talk about, you know, especially with AI, data is critically important. And had we not taken the time to build kind of that, done the personalization data management and really build that runway to be able to recognize a user based on certain data attributes, we wouldn't have been prepared for what we're about to tip into next, which is orchestration and AI. So I would also couple that with like, if I were starting this journey, I agree with Lindsay in the sense of like, really thinking about, what does employee need from the organization? So upskilling and all that kind of stuff. But I would say in order to do that the right way, you're going to have personalization and you're going to have to really think through that. Well, so interesting. We had 41% mentioned centralizing content across the organization, which I would say that's the underpinning of really why any internet begins and lives on too. So I totally get that. Well, Tori, I'm going to pass it over to you. Um, and maybe you could answer one of our first questions in the chat, which I know the answer to this, and it's yes, but maybe you can just give a quick nod to that. It said, has Akumina ever been used in healthcare?
Certainly, and we could certainly share case studies and more information, but many healthcare clients.
Well, great. Well, we're excited to hear a little bit more about the AI-enabled journey and sort of where Akumina is going. So do you want to share?
Excellent, great. Yeah, I will share my screen. And before I get into it, certainly want to thank you both very much, Jen and Lindsay. It's always really great to see the platform in action and really how people can use it to create these engaging and empowering experiences. And kind of on that vein, we're going to take a look today at a couple of different ways that Acumen is leveraging AI in its platform. And how that's really helping to deliver engaging experiences. And so when you think about what Jen and Lindsay were just going through, a lot of it was framed around personas. And so everything that we build inside of our framework is built on a number of core kind of tenets. Personalization is one of them. Um, Content delivery is another, and certainly search and discovery is another. And when we leverage AI, we build it into the core of our platform, and we do that so that it's there for everyone. For employees, it's going to provide a very personalized and engaging experience wherever I might interact with AI. So, for example, if I look here, everything in this page is personalized and tailored to me, much like the examples that Lindsay and Jen just went over. We carry that through to AI as well. So if I go in and let's just say I start by looking for something like a PTO policy. Well, it knows a bit about me. And so it says your finance department follows a flexible paid time off. Well, how does it know that? So I can just say, who am I? We know who the logged in user is. Oh, and of course, give me 1 second here. Sorry about this, folks. Let me go back into that discussion here real quick. So, who am I? And I wanted to bring this up because it's pulling out information about me. So you're Luke, you're from Frederick, Maryland, you work in this department. And so that's showing that the system knows those attributes about me. And now those could be coming from different systems like Active Directory, like Workday, all of them combining together. So it's the same personalization engine that we're using. And so you decide what attributes of people you want to make the system aware of. And so that's going to start delivering content to me based on who I am. So say, for example, if I want to go in and do a search, it's going to start returning content to me, not just based on what's in the system, but also what's available based on my persona. So I'm a full-time employee. So I'm going to see the full-time or PTO policy for full-time employees. But what I'm not seeing here is a bunch of information about hourly benefits or anything like that, because that's not the profile that I'm in. And so we're getting search information delivered to me in a relevant manner. We're also using AI to scope a discussion around that around that content. So I've got a summary here of information based on my search term. I certainly have the search results as well. If I want to go in and now start having a conversation with that content, I can do so. And so now what I'm doing is if I want to just go in and say any restrictions. What I'm now doing is I'm getting relevant information delivered to me real time based on all of that data, who I am, what my role is, what content's available. I didn't have to open up any of these documents to find the information that I was looking for. That was just made available to me right from the system. And so all of that is built in, and it really allows an employee to find knowledge quickly, and in a lot of cases, knowledge to find them based on who they are. So, for example, if I go over here to this page, this is a page and we're using AI to deliver dynamic content to. So think in terms of FAQs, how do I's, how to's, all of those kind of static and managed documents being able to go away and being replaced by interactive content like this, where, I want to understand, what hoteling options are available for me. And so, again, it knows who I am and it's saying, based on where you are, here's information based on who you are. And it's giving me that information right away. And so if any of that changes, that's automatically going to update for me. And it's even allowing us to go in and scope. And I think, Jen, you mentioned this, that kind of knowledge management and being able to, understand what's available to people. Well, we can create what we call knowledge buckets that then scope conversations to those knowledge sources. And so when I'm asking, what are the latest legal agreements, it knows to look at legal and finance as its source. Now, if you let me, I can expand that more, or you can scope it so I can't expand that. So all of those things are built in for an employee to be able to quickly get to information and discover things with less friction, regardless of where that information sits, how they might normally access it. It really allows them to go in and get to that information very, very quickly. Um, so let's take a look at one other use case really quickly for employees. And so I'm going to go over here real quick. And we're going to talk about dynamic AI-driven cards. And so these allow employees to really see critical things that are happening in their day tailored to them. So maybe I want to see, my open service tickets, my urgent emails, but I also want to see things about what's going on in my world. I like motivational quotes. I like to know what's happening, in the local community or in the weather. I can have all of that directed to me dynamically and it can be managed centrally. And so we're going to get into management here in a moment. But it's about creating that self-service, not just around when I go look for something, but start to show me things, show me what's going on in my day, and allow me to see the things that are relevant and important to me. And this is all dynamically driven by AI. I don't have to go in and build this as an end user. So let's go in and kind of flip things around a little bit and take a look at management. So we've extended the management of content out into AI as well. And so we're not just delivering solutions for employees to interact with, but think content authors, experience owners, they can come in and control a lot of these things. So if I want to take a look at this entire page here, a lot of it is being delivered by AI, both in terms of the content that's being generated, as well as things like this. If I want to go in and, as an author, embed conversation starters in AI in content, I can do that using AI. So now, right inside of content, I can have conversation starters. And again, all of the persona-driven behavior, all of those knowledge buckets, all of that is part of that interactivity when I'm going in and building these things. I can also use AI to deliver content directly into the page. So if I want to go in and edit these things, I can do so. And I do this very quickly, and I'll just show a couple of examples. To create one of those links, I just go right into the editor, and I've got a little prompt builder that allows me to go in and build a prompt, generate it, and then place it into the content. If I go in and take a look at that section of content that was delivered dynamically, I have that same dynamic, but instead of creating a prompt, I'm now going to use it to create dynamic content. And so I have all of that management capability built in from an author standpoint. I again can even use it to go in and dynamically create functionality. So all those widgets, all that capability on this page was just built by me going in and describing it using natural language. And so we're extending all of those capabilities from content authoring and publishing and even page management from all manual and task driven to being adaptive and driven by AI and really allowing authors to take control of the experience in a way that they haven't been able to do before. And then all of this gets back-ended certainly by a management studio. And so if I go in here into our AI studio, this is really where a lot of that control and that ability to scope the discussions can occur. And it really allows you to create a well-governed and trusted knowledge base so that employees know the information they're getting is going to be accurate. So it allows me to go in and do things like build knowledge buckets, and in those knowledge buckets determine how they might behave, right? So, do I want this knowledge bucket to be able to search the web or not? Do I want to tailor it to personas? What do I want to make available in terms of sources for this knowledge bucket? How do I want this to be able to understand content, so I can go in and add content to it. So I can build out all of these, and then this allows me to go in and start scoping that interaction. So I know that when I'm interacting with I can scope it to just what people are looking for. If I'm on a benefits page, don't have AI talking to, campuses and facilities knowledge bucket. Have it talk to HR policies, right? Those types of things occur. And then under the prompt side of things, here's where I can go in and I can start building different prompts and categorizing them to then again drive that front end experience. So if I want to create a brand new prompt here, and I could say, where is the closest um, restaurants? Sorry, and I'm getting over a cold, folks. And I'm just going to go through this real quick. Just put in some test content here. And so I can go in and build that out. That prompt is now created and saved. And if I go back to the front end here and I want to go look at facilities, I now see that prompt is added into the experience. And so I can manage it very, very quickly on the management side of things, but then it's made available to people immediately. Of course, these things, are all governed so they can go through workflow, they can be approved. So all of these are, think of it as knowledge managed interactions for AI. And so you're able to have control there. Now, all of this is certainly um, governed by analytics as well, so I can see certain things like time off, or sorry, not time off, search terms like time off or frequently used words, things like that. I can see where content's coming from, knowledge buckets. I can see my managed items. I have the ability to sync them here. So all of this is all managed with inside the experience, and so we're able to deliver a very engaging and empowering experience that's highly governed and relevant for employees. And so that's what I wanted to share today from a demo perspective.
Great, thank you. Nicole, if you don't mind going back to the deck, I'm going to do a quick polling question. And then I am going to just open it up to questions before we close out for today. So how ready is your organization for using AI in the employee experience? A, not ready at all. B, early exploration. C, partially ready. D, mostly ready. Or E, fully ready. Troy, while we're waiting for this answer, um, you know, how would you answer this for most organization, and what would you say the most critically important thing to be ready, or to get ready is?
Yeah, I would see, we're seeing people at the early to partially ready
Okay.
stages. And a lot of it I think is driven by the our customer base is highly aligned to the Microsoft stack, and there's a lot of AI readiness built in there, and so they're exposed to it a bit more. To be ready for it, you really have to start thinking in terms of, and it's kind of funny. Anybody in the content management world is going to know this phrase: is that content is king. If your content isn't well authored, isn't well governed, isn't well maintained, AI is only going to be able to give you what it has, right? And
Yeah.
so that would be the first thing is come up with those plans, much like you folks did for who are my personas, what does my content look like, what are my content strategies, all of that stuff needs to be in place. And then you really can leverage AI to start delivering those engaging experiences.
Great. Well, it looks like you answered the question kind of right. Like most people are sort of in that early to partially ready stage. I certainly would add personalization and that data aspect of users is really key, probably as well, before you kind of start down this role. There's another question in chat I was going to throw out to you, Troy. From this comes from Anthony, and it says, "By what date will all these AI features be implemented? When will they be ported to F53? Are the AI features going to be licensed for additional costs? Will there be additional charges for AI features such as Azure? And can you decide what model you can use?"
So there's a lot there, and certainly we'd want to follow up on that. So from a release date perspective, I don't hold me to it, but we're definitely looking at in uh, either end of this into early next year, right? So everything I'm showing you, everything I showed you is all in live in production. But from a release perspective, we still need to go through testing and all of those things. So I'm not going to put my product team out on a limb there with that one, but certainly we can follow up more about that. We will definitely provide more information. From a licensing perspective, there will be licensed options available depending on how far you want to take AI. Some things are inbuilt in the platform, other things you will need to license. And then from a Azure perspective, we certainly could cover that as well. So we'd certainly love to have a follow-up on any of those conversations.
Great. And then there was a question I answered Stephen, but I'm going to just read it out loud because other people may have this same scenario. Stephen mentioned if a firm uses ServiceNow across HR and IT today, is a thought that Akuma would be complementary replacing it. And my answer was just we're actually a ServiceNow shop as well. So not only an Akumina partner, but a ServiceNow partner. We've worked in the platform for 10 years. And certainly they can complement each other. But I will tell you, it depends a lot on your goals of what we would recommend. We have a lot of organizations kind of going through the same question with multiple tools. And so, really, where we start with that question is it's not a one size fits all. And like I said, they do complement each other. So, what we typically do is we start with kind of an employee experience strategy, really better understand, what your users need, what's working, what's not working, how you're using your tools today. What does your current technical ecosystem look like? And then certainly, what are the teams you have to support these tools as well as the budget you have, and then really come back with the best solution that's going to support like ongoing, both your employees as well as your technical and business strategy. So if you'd like, I'd love to set up a call to kind of explore those options. Um, the other question we got was around, hold on. How long did it take us? So we've implemented with Akumina like a lot of intranets over the years, and it really depends. I would say our approach is number one, always start with sort of that strategy, which can be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how big and how complex the organization is. That's really going to set that groundwork for how you define the experience to model after your business objectives and what you're trying to do. So what Lindsay and I just walked you through today, came after us really understanding the goals of our users and really aligning it to our business model. I mean, what we do specifically from a professional services firm. So we start with that assessment, and then, honestly, from an agile perspective, we can work our development phases around both your budgets and your timelines. I mean, most typically it's about 6 months to a year. Um, but we can also do accelerated versions that are a little bit shorter. So it's one of those things we really would have to work with you, understand your goals, and really tailor what we were doing to kind of the needs and budgets that you're working towards. For our specific intranet, I would say our first, like we went through a strategy, and then our first development life cycle was probably around a year. And then ours really hasn't stopped. We actually have a small kind of RGP Connect team that we keep embedded that is continuing to add features. And then some of it's non-development. So for instance, Lindsay is the product owner here, and she really works to use all the stuff we've already developed, but add critical features that still can be done without development. So we really use it heavily tied to our marketing team now, to basically surface a lot of go-to-market things like campaigns and things like that that could be available to our teams. Um, The next question was, I think it was for me, and it said, you've had a couple iterations of Akumina. What platform did you start with, and did you migrate to Akumina? So we've actually always been Akumina. So RGPD actually also started on Akumina. Troy and Lindsay, do you want to talk a little bit about the versions that we've been on?
Sure. Gosh, you folks started.
Yeah, it's been a long
Uh,
time. RGpedia was probably
yeah.
6 years ago. So
Yeah, so I mean, I won't even guess at the version number. It was pre 6, which is pre everything the interface that you folks have seen today and anybody would see. So it
yeah.
was quite a long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
but it's great to see the evolution because you've really been able to keep pace with our technology and it's been a great journey for us too because we've learned a lot and incorporated a lot into our product over those years based
Yeah.
on working with you folks like we do with a lot of our customers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, it's been a great journey together.
Yeah, it has been a great journey, and definitely the orchestration. It has come out of a lot of our other employee experience projects that we not only do for ourselves but for other clients. Talking to you guys about some of those features and stuff like that. The one thing I just would say as a takeaway, in putting together this webinar, and I've done employee experience for a very long time been doing experience for 27 years, but been focused on all forms of kind of like HR and employee experience strategies for the last 10. And I would say the thing that I took away the most from kind of putting this stuff together and really reflecting on the work that we've done together is that you need to have it driven by your employees, but I think it also needs to be in tone with your business model
Yep.
and what you're actually doing as a business. And I think sometimes when people explore employee experience strategies, we still focus on user needs, we still focus on those things, but it remains sort of that collaboration space. And I think if you really want it to grow with your business, you've got to dip it into sort of the entire business objectives and how do you tie those employee experience needs into the other things you're trying to do within the organization. And I really think that's what we were able to do with RGP Connect. Well, anyway, I know we're a little over. Thank you for letting me talk on for 2 more minutes. I really appreciate you, Troy, for joining us today. And Lindsay, thank you for all your insightful knowledge on RGP Connect. And thanks to everyone else for joining us. It was a great time. And we would love to connect. As Troy said, if you have any other questions, happy to jump on a call and kind of talk through our experiences with intranets and with the platform. Have a great day,
All
everyone.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.